Hi, everyone. We're back with a new episode. I'm trying to keep my 2 times a week going here, and I might be able to do it. So bear with me in case I miss a Tuesday or a Thursday episode at some point. But, I remain committed to doing this with you all and, kind of keeping you aligned with my journey and my life as it teaches me and as I go. Here we go. Today's topic that I want to talk about is something that I refer to often in my tweets and otherwise. And I think it can be sort of a fuzzy or a big concept for people. So I like to be able to break these things down so people kind of know what I'm talking about without it being kind of vast or, not totally digestible. So the topic or the theme is collapsing timelines. I talk about this a lot. In fact, I posted something the other day that said, collapse the timelines that keep you away from yourself. And what I mean by that, and when we look at a timeline, right? So I'm going to give you example. I feel like examples are the best way to describe what I'm talking about here. So say you are in a relationship and someone hurts you, right? Someone cheats on you. And so maybe you're the woman and you've been cheated on. So from that moment of having been cheated on, you have some kind of options, and I think naturally, if you're choosing options from a place of being upset or emotionally kind of provoked or reactive, you're going to go right in a particular direction. If you're choosing the timeline of what's the highest good for all, you're going to maybe go in a particular direction. If you're choosing the timeline of like what is required here for my highest healing, that might take you in a slightly different direction, maybe kind of mostly towards the highest good of all, but you might orient it more around what's going to be the healthiest choice for me. So anytime an event kind of, sometimes even say a trauma happens, certain timelines are born from that experience. Now, it might be one singular experience, like a heartbreak of some sort. It might be an experience that was sort of accumulated over the lifetime of, your childhood, where your family sort of treated you in a certain way. And therefore, as a result of that treatment, this particular timeline was kind of born, even subconsciously, as a result of this being the dynamic with your family, and therefore as a defense mechanism or as a protective mechanism or whatever else it was, this kind of trait or characteristic was born out of you, and you then live out from that trait or characteristic. So when I think about collapsing timelines, then is what we have to look at is the traits and characteristics that are born from these experiences or this accumulated experience that don't actually represent who you are. So say you have the big heartbreak, right? Maybe you go immediately into villain mode, and I'm not mad at it. I get it. And I think if you have anger and rage over something like this, it can be channeled in a healthy way. But that's the key, right? We want to channel our energy, our emotionality in ways that are healthy and beneficial, especially to ourselves, because, holding something against someone or being mad at someone forever, or, then going into like, all men are bad or all men cheat or whatever it is, that's only going to do a disservice to yourself ultimately. So we want to be very aware of using the emotionality that results from traumatic experiences or negative experiences or not fun experiences, if you will, and channeling that energy and that emotion into something that's going to create more power for ourselves versus something that's going to end up abandoning ourselves, right? Abandoning who we really are. If you're aligned with villain mode from getting your heart broken and you're not really a villain, or that's just purely your rage speaking, or it's not actually going to help you heal, or it's not good for anybody in the dynamic, you have to look at that. You have to be really honest with yourself. Is this lining me up to be successful as more of myself, or is it lining me up to be in a space eventually where I've totally abandoned who I actually am as a result of this experience? So collapsing timelines and clearing timelines and jumping timelines can all be done in real time when you're aware enough, you have the solid self-awareness enough to recognize this is happening, right? So that's one example, so your heart's broken, you can either go villain mode and go full rage, and maybe, eventually you end up kind of wake up one day and you realize you've taken the path that has simply abandoned yourself. You're not any happier, and, the dynamic is messy and there's no healing at all. And you don't even feel like you've benefited from that path. And you have to be honest with that. You could take the path of like, cool, you could dead them or whatever you need to do to kind of cut the cord, but still align with like, you want the highest healing for all. You can pray for them still. You can still send them love, right? You don't have to hold resentment within yourself over it, because if you do that, you're only doing a disservice to yourself. They don't even know that you're doing that, right? So whatever you do on your end is for you. I think that's such a major key, because if a timeline is born out of, I'm going to do this to you, or I'm going to get back at you, then, while that can be sometimes good fuel, like kind of show the haters like that you're the one, but do it from a place of like, also make sure that the oneness that's coming out of you is actually you, right? Like if you need to get back at this person by doing something out of character, out of alignment with your path, and you're doing yourself a disservice almost more than you're doing them, getting back at them, or whatever we have in our heads that we think that we're doing. So that's kind of one example. Another one, and this is an example of my own. In fact, I'm going to call myself out here because I know many of you, some people have actually told me that I kind of talk fast in these videos, and I'm very present with that. I think one piece of it is that I'm kind of consistently moving big energy as I talk. And so I'm still, training myself to talk a little bit slower and kind of, hold my energy in a little bit of a different way. But the truth of the matter is, I think that tendency for me was born as a result of, in my childhood, my family are, kind of talkers. And I felt like I always had to kind of talk fast to get my point in, or be able to say my piece without getting interrupted. So I would just kind of talk as quickly as I could to get everything out and to put my point in there before I got cut off or whatever else it was. And so, obviously, and this is just little girl me, I don't even really realize that's happening. I'm just adapting, right? I'm just adapting to my environment. And so again, it's not necessarily a negative thing. It works great for reels because I talk fast enough that I put it in a minute and it works great. But obviously, and ideally, I'm still working and training myself to talk a little bit slower and, bring my energy out versus kind of using it through my voice. But that timeline was born for me primarily environmentally because of that. And so I would, talk as fast as I could, get it all out, and then get cut off. and I laugh at it now. It obviously wasn't totally pleasant at the time, but I can see it now, and I know where it comes from. And I notice when I do it in conversation, if I'm talking to someone who's a big talker, I often get kind of shut down. In fact, as kind of a healing, a welcoming, warm energy, I often get talked at like more than I'd like to admit, because I'm still learning how to like tell someone they're doing it, which is so uncomfortable. Like, you're talking too much, or at least like let me and be a part of the conversation. I don't like to be talked at, but it's really difficult, again, to correct that in real time. So I say all that to say, I'm aware that this is a tendency of mine. And I think that I have more power in my voice to be cultivated by calming and relaxing a little bit, and, trying to speak from a different space when I talk, and slowing it down a little bit. So I find myself energetically in the space of, like, again, trying to kind of get my point across versus just being fully present with what I'm saying and trying to call down the highest wisdom as I speak, and all of that kind of happening at one time. So what I have had to do is kind of go back and it's, you want to call it kind of inner child work or whatever, I think that's a good term for it, just because you are kind of like meeting with that younger version of you that needed to do X, Y, and Z to kind of maintain their power or have a place in their family environment or whatever it is. So you kind of revisit that, the point where this type of behavior was born. And, there's many ways to do it, but, maybe in a meditation, you just kind of sit with that version of you that felt like they had to behave in a certain way to achieve X, Y, and Z, and calm that down, right? Or maybe you imagine what you could have done differently. And say, for me, it would have been that if somebody cut me off, I would stop that behavior, right? Because that's not appropriate. I should be able to say what I want to say at a normal speed without the fear of getting cut off and then feel shut down, because that's what it was for me. And so what I would have preferred to have been able to do, and again, a young girl is maybe not the best at this, but letting someone know, I'm not done, let me land. And so I'm practicing that now. And I'm also simultaneously revisiting the little girl who was constantly shut down and cut off, so that I can soften some of that, the kind of wounding from that was born, this timeline where I talk fast and what have you. So and these are just examples from my own life experience. Obviously, I like to always let you guys know I'm doing this work with you. If not, like, I'm in no way healed or self-mastered, right? Like, I'm still very actively, constantly, and consistently doing my work. So we all have these though, right? We all have ways, probably definitely born from childhood, because that's just kind of how that goes, that a certain environment was present and we adapted to our environment that maybe wasn't the highest outcome for us, or maybe didn't fully represent who we are, in our highest version. And so we have to be willing to look at that. If you're someone, especially if you're someone who, say, has a thing against men or a thing against women, and you're, a woman or a man with a thing against the opposite sex, that's always such a powerful space for you to revisit, because to put a whole category, and maybe it's not man or woman, maybe it's you have a thing against a certain race, or you have a thing against a certain group of people, you got to look at that. You know, it's never doing you any good to feel a certain way about an entire group of people. Like, that's your own stuff to look at. And, you know, you're then projecting your own stuff onto that group in its entirety, when a whole group is never depicted by one experience or one person from the group. So there's a whole spectrum and within any group, and that all types of people exist within a group. So it's very unfair to the group and to you to project your wounding onto that whole group, and instead just figure out why you're mad at men, right? Or figure out why you're mad at women, or whatever else, whoever else you're mad at. You got to look at it, and you got to do the work for yourself to collapse the timeline where madness, anger comes from this group of people, because that's only, again, it's only keeping you away from yourself. If every time you think about getting in a relationship and you've been so hurt that you can't even consider it, and you're mad at whomever about it, you know, I really encourage you to collapse that timeline, right? Find the pain point, sit with it, heal it, find forgiveness, pray about it, like do whatever you need to do, meditate on it, go through the emotions of it that maybe you haven't felt yet, or are sitting inside bottled up, causing this anger to spew every time you even think about a relationship or whatever it is. It's so much for you. It's so much for you. You know, I think oftentimes in our head, we're like, if we think of forgiveness, we think we're doing it for the other person. Really, really, really fundamentally, it's for you. I mean, it's for both of you, obviously, but they may never know. You know, forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. So you may forgive someone for breaking your heart, but that doesn't mean you get back together. By no means does it mean you get back together. You may cut the cord, cut them off completely. It's a done deal, and you still find forgiveness. So they'll never know. It's not like you're writing them a forgiveness letter or letting them know in any way. You don't need to reopen communication if communication is closed and that's what's healthiest for you. But forgiveness is for you, on your side of forgiveness. So I think that's, you know, a major way to collapse a timeline is to forgive whatever you're mad at, whatever you're holding, or whoever you're holding something against, because again, you're only holding it within you. You're only holding it within you. So forgiveness is such a powerful tool for your own liberation. If you allow yourself just to find the peace and to clean the energy and energetics and emotionality around any dynamic or relationship or whatever it is that immediately triggers you or takes you out of yourself, right? Away from yourself. Nobody wants to be angry all the time. And ideally you're not, right? Like, to me, the highest life experience is really, more than anything else, just to feel good in your body. Like, it's so, so simple. That's why mind, body, soul, spirit is all, you know, it's all, if you really want to live your highest life, it's all the things, because it's how your mind is looking at life and how you're relating to things mentally and intellectually. It's how you feel in your physical body. Is your body healthy and happy and well, and you feel good to be in it? Your vibe is right. You know, is your soul clear and clean and available to reality and constantly seeking evolution? Is your spirit guided towards the highest vibrational experiences? And are you leaning in that direction, right? Like, I think we think of life in society has put, you know, the pedestal of fame and fortune, right? Like, everybody wants to be famous and wealthy, and nothing wrong with that at all. By no means, if that's your path, like, take your path, but that doesn't have to be, that's not the be all end all. In fact, there's been like too many now, like movie stars and, you know, very famous people, super rich people have come out and been like, I sat in the floor of my mega mansion and I cried because I arrived and I was less happy than I was when I was living out of my car. You know, like, it's so true. In fact, the documentary I Am is one of the aspects of my kind of weekend that really woke me up in 2012. I watched that documentary, and it's exactly that. It's a mega star producer who kind of reached the pinnacle of success. He had all the money, he had all the fame, he had all the fortune, he'd done all the things, and he sat down in the middle of his mansion and he's like, I don't even like my life, and I don't even like myself, and I hardly know who I am. And that's deep, right? Like, how are you successful if you don't even know yourself? That doesn't sound like success to me. I mean, you know, it's like maybe a matrix version of success, maybe just pure materialism. Like, yeah, I suppose, but you know, no matter what you're surrounded by, if you don't like yourself, if you don't know yourself, if you don't feel good in your body, you're not happy and healthy in your mind, body, spirit, soul, then, you know, I think we're missing the mark. So that's why doing these kinds of practices are so important, because we find the ways that we live out tendencies and even parts of that we think are parts of our personality that aren't even us. They're not even us. They're just there, born out of a defense mechanism or a coping mechanism of some sort as a result of an experience that happened to you, or, you know, the accumulation of childhood experiences that kind of created this version of you. So I think, you know, again, so much of healing, so much of alchemy is reverse engineering the energetics that you live with, the tendencies that you know, live about, and reverse engineering them to why you do that. And is it because it's the most empowering version of you and it's absolutely correct and it's totally, you know, aligned with your largest energetic blueprint? If so, awesome, keep that, right? If it's a result of a wounding or a trauma or a childhood experience or anything else that cause harm within you, and so therefore it's almost a coping mechanism or a defense mechanism to keep that from ever happening again, or, you know, a way of maintaining your power in that's not totally powerful. You got to look at it. And we all have them. And the more you reclaim your power, the more you reverse engineer your tendencies that abandon you, boy, is there power there for you. There is so much power in reclaiming the timelines that have led you away from yourself. That is, like, to me, been some of the most ultimately powerful practices, is to figure out which ones they are. And then as you start to do that, you can do it in real time. Like, you have a negative experience happen to you. I kind of had that most recently with my dating situation, and I had a choice, right? I had a choice. I could either just be super mad and go villain mode and just be pissed and raged and angry about it, or I could look at it honestly and figure out the role that I played in it and why it happened as it did, and, you know, the lessons that I got out of it, and you know, take that higher path, if you will, because energetically, vibrationally, it is higher to move from like understanding and compassion versus, you know, anger and rage. And again, the two can come together. You know, I do feel angry, but I've learned how to channel my anger, so I'm not, you know, raging, and it's, you know, I don't need to like tell everybody about it or call people out on it. I just figure out the role that I played so that I can make sure I never play that role again. That's like my, you know, form of revenge, and also cutting the cord, right? Like, be totally done with it. No more access to me. We're done there. And then figure out the role that I played so I can stop the timeline that creates me in these kinds of dynamics. So it's all real time, right? It's kind of always happening in real time. Life is always giving you the experiences that help you see yourself better. It's giving you opportunities to birth new timelines, and ideally, again, the ones that are going to lead you to your highest vibrational experience. And so we have to be present with that we're making choices consistently, albeit oftentimes subconscious, to go certain paths. It's almost like, you know, the butterfly effect, right? Certain choice point happens, you're making the decision which way you want to take it. And what I'm offering you is to always choose the path that feels like most empowering for you, that feels like you're going to be picking up all the golden nuggets of your most authentic self, and to not totally move from just full emotional reactivity, but instead to let some of that, like, feel the feels, and then let some of that soften before you decide like what timeline you're going to birth from this place. Because moving only emotionally, and I think this is where a lot of women, you know, miss the mark, is kind of what causes us to abandon ourselves, because emotions are temporary, right? Emotions are here to teach us and show us the full extent that a circumstance or an experience has brought us, but they don't stay forever. So if you're moving and making decisions out of rage, somewhere down the line, you're not going to feel the rage anymore. And so suddenly you've taken this path that's born from rage, but now once you go deep enough down it, you don't feel it anymore. And so then it's like not even really who you are, right? You were just walking in the anger. So I think letting emotions settle before we decide what actions we're going to take from a certain experience or environment is a key to doing this in real time, so that you are only birthing the timelines and the traits and the characteristics and the personalities that represent who you actually are, and not what's been done to you, or you being a victim to something, or any other, you know, kind of getting back at something, or revenge, or any other type of, you know, pathway that's going to end up just being you abandoning yourself. So that's what I mean when I talk about collapsing timelines. I hope that helps. I definitely think context and experiences really help, you know, us understand things better. And so when I say collapse the timelines that keep you away from yourself, it's looking at all the ways that you maybe aren't totally yourself, or your tendencies that maybe don't represent your full power, your full peace, right? And then fine-tuning them, reverse engineering them, clearing out the ways that you behave that aren't, you know, representative of your best self, and be willing to erase them. You know, you can change your story anytime. You are writing, you know, you're the pen, and I feel like God or universe, your life divine assignment is the ink, right? It's being kind of written, co-created, but it is up to you ultimately to make sure that the person you are bringing forward and embodying represents you. It's amazing how many people don't represent themselves, don't even know themselves. And so give yourself a lot of grace, obviously, because this is deep work. And sometimes you have to revisit things that aren't super fun. I mean, oftentimes, right, we're looking back at the traumas or the childhood environments that like were not fun at all. And so defense mechanisms were born. It's okay. We all do it. But let me tell you, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it to go through and re-feel the feels if you have to. It's worth it to clear out all the energetics, all the emotions that are held and stored as a result of this having happened to you, so that you can reclaim all that space within you to actually be yourself. That's what it means to me to collapse a timeline, to jump a timeline, you know, to avoid, say, in the real time, jump a timeline from, instead of taking the path that's going to lead you away from yourself, to jump that one and on over to the higher timeline that's going to take you closer to yourself. It's going to bring you more of yourself. So this is what I mean. I'm just going to give you guys that today, because that's been a theme that's pretty present for me and something I'm actively working on, obviously, now that I've just told you the work that where I'm at. So let me know if this lands with you, if this is something you already kind of do, if it's uncomfortable for you. You know, there's no right or wrong way about this. It's just a willingness, right? That's so much of what doing the work is about, is just a willingness to see yourself, to look at the ways that you're not totally yourself, or you maybe in ways that you don't love yourself, or that you behave in a certain way that doesn't really represent who you really are at the core. And it doesn't always feel good to see those parts of you, but this is the shadow work. This is the necessary work to reclaim all the parts of you, to really feel your power again, to live out your most supreme and excellent life. So I'm just here to tell you my path and how I do things, and give you a little bit of my verbiage. And I hope that you find your own path and can live this out in a way that, you know, ultimately you just are continuing to rise into your most excellent self. That's the only, you know, direction I hope to guide you towards. So that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you think. Please do like, subscribe, and do all the things so we can continue to build this channel. Last little announcement here. I've just booked a retreat in Miami for July 21st through 23rd. I'm going to be leading it, co-creating it, leading it with the Thrive Goddess. She's actually been on my channel before, so you can pop back into our conversation if you want to feel her absolutely amazing power and incredible energy. So we're coming together to put on this retreat, Miami, July 21st through 23rd. So save the dates. I'll have more information for y'all very soon, probably within the next week. All right. I love you guys. Thank you. And I'll see you next time.